Commander Elira had always been prepared for the worst, trained for deep space missions, survival tactics, and facing dangers of all kinds. She had never imagined being left to die on an alien planet. Her spaceship had crashed hours ago, and now, as she lay in the dirt, her body battered and bruised, the truth was sinking in. She was alone. The rest of the crew, gone. The ship, destroyed. And now, there was nothing but silence, and the strange, distant hum of the jungle around her. The Galactic Union had promised her safety, her return. They had promised the others that they would rescue her in just a few days. But Elira knew better than to trust empty promises. Her wrist communicator, now shattered, had sent a final message before it went dead. The Union's words echoed in her head. "You are a liability. Survival is not expected. Goodbye." Elira tried to sit up, groaning as pain shot through her left side. She couldn't tell how many bones were broken, but she was sure it wasn't just a few. Blood had already dried on her uniform, mixing with the dirt that had settled into the cuts across her face. She could feel the weight of the crash in her body, the force that had sent her ship tumbling across the planet's surface. The memory of the impact still made her stomach turn. "Survive," she muttered under her breath. "I will survive." Her training kicked in. She had to focus. The first rule of survival was simple: don't panic. But how could she not? Her entire life had been built on the belief that the Union was there to protect its own. And yet here she was, abandoned on a strange world, with no hope of rescue. Her mind raced. The jungle around her seemed alive, full of sounds she didn't recognize. Birds, or something far more dangerous. There were shadows moving at the edges of her vision, and the hairs on her neck stood up. Elira's instincts told her to stay still, but curiosity pushed her to stand and look around. A small rustle from the dense undergrowth grabbed her attention. Elira froze. Something was watching her. With shaky hands, she reached for her weapon, but her holster was empty. The crash had torn her equipment away. She cursed softly. Her heart hammered in her chest, and the sweat on her brow wasn't from just the heat. She could feel her pulse in her ears. The rustling grew louder, closer. Whatever it was big, heavy, and it was coming straight toward her. Then, out of the shadows, something emerged. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't even a creature she recognized. A figure, tall and rugged, dressed in torn, weathered clothing, stepped forward. But it wasn't just the strange appearance of the person that caught Elira off guard. It was the face. The human face. Her breath caught in her throat. The human was different. They had the wild, untamed look of someone who had lived their whole life on this planet, without the rules of civilization. Their skin was dirt-smeared, their hair long and tangled, but there was no mistaking the eyes. Human eyes. She blinked in disbelief. How could this be? She was sure the Union had reported humans as extinct on this planet, wiped out long ago by the very same organization that had abandoned her. But there they were, standing in front of her, like something out of a myth. "Who are you?" Elira managed to whisper, trying to steady her breath. She couldn't let them see her fear. She needed answers. The human spoke, but the words were different. Their language wasn't the one Elira was familiar with. She could understand some of it, but there was an odd, harsh tone to it, something ancient. Yet one word stood out clearly, enough to make Elira's heart race again. Human. Human. Was this some kind of sick joke? Elira looked at the wild human before her. She tried to stay calm, but her mind was racing. Was she seeing things? Were there others like this? Where had they come from? The human watched her carefully. They didn't seem hostile, just curious. The figure didn't speak again, but instead reached out a hand, gesturing toward the thick jungle behind them. Without thinking, Elira stepped back, but the figure took a step closer, and she could sense a kind of urgency in their movement. Then, as if the moment was over, the figure turned and began to walk away, their long strides quickly disappearing into the dense foliage. For a moment, Illyra hesitated. Should she follow? She had nothing left to lose. If these people were truly human, perhaps they could help her. She had to know more. But what did they want from her? There was something in the way they looked at her, a kind of knowing, like they understood her better than she understood herself. She didn't know whether to trust them, but in that moment, Illyra made a decision. She had to find out who these humans were, and what they were hiding. Taking a deep breath, she followed. Her journey had just begun, and with every step, the mystery deepened. Illyra moved quickly, pushing through the thick underbrush as she followed the mysterious figure. The jungle around her seemed to close in, its strange sounds echoing in her ears. It was alive, but not in the way she had ever known. The trees towered above her, their leaves thick and dark, blocking out most of the sunlight. But there was a path, a trail of broken branches and crushed grass, leading her deeper into the unknown. Her breath was heavy, and her body ached from the crash, but she pushed on. She couldn't stop now. There was too much at stake, too many questions. The figure had disappeared into the jungle, but she could still hear the rustle of footsteps ahead. Whoever they were fast. As Illyra continued to follow, her thoughts raced. The word they had spoken, human, replayed in her mind. She had to know more. The Union had wiped out humans on this planet long ago, or so they said. If these people were truly human, they could hold the answers she needed. She had to find them, even if it meant risking her life. Soon, she came upon a clearing. The thick jungle opened up to reveal a small, hidden village. It was nothing like the clean, advanced cities of the Union. This place was raw, untamed, much like the people who lived there. Wooden huts were scattered around the clearing, built from trees and vines. The air smelled of smoke, and the ground was covered with strange plants and animals. Illyra could see people moving about, but they were different. They didn't wear uniforms or high-tech gear. Instead, they wore simple clothes, handmade from what looked like animal hides and woven plants. These were the wild humans. Illyra couldn't believe her eyes. She had expected to find primitive survivors, but this was a society, a community, and they were living here, hidden from the Union, far away from the reach of any government or space organization. Her heart raced as she approached the edge of the village. She wasn't sure what to do next. If she walked in, would they see her as a threat? Would they attack? Or could they help her? Before she could make up her mind, a voice spoke from behind her. "Don't move." Illyra spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. But it was useless. The person standing behind her was one of the wild humans, his face serious, and his posture ready to attack if necessary. He had dark, weathered skin, and his eyes were sharp, watching her every movement. His clothes were simple, almost primitive, and he held a spear in one hand, its tip glinting in the faint light. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Illyra said quickly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "I just need help." The man didn't lower his spear, but his eyes studied her carefully. After what seemed like an eternity, he spoke in broken Galactic Basic. "You? Crash. You not Union." His voice was deep, rough. He wasn't used to speaking Galactic Basic, but Illyra understood him well enough. "I'm not Union," Illyra said. "I was left behind. My ship crashed. I need to know where I am, and who you are." The man seemed to consider her words for a long moment. Then, finally, he lowered his spear slightly. But his eyes never left her. "I'm Kai," he said simply. "You follow me. I take you to leader." Illyra didn't have time to think. She had no choice but to follow. Kai turned and began to walk into the village, with Illyra trailing behind him, careful to stay out of his reach. The villagers eyed her with suspicion as they worked around the clearing, some stopping to watch her, others whispering to each other in their strange language. As they moved deeper into the village, Illyra couldn't help but notice how strong and resilient these people were. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The huts were simple but well built, The people worked together, hunting, gathering, and building. There was a sense of unity here, something she hadn't seen in years. Finally, they reached a larger hut in the center of the village. Kai pushed open the door and motioned for Illyra to enter. Inside, an older man sat on a wooden chair, his face lined with age and experience. His eyes were kind, but there was also a certain hardness to him. "Who is she, Kai?" the man asked, his voice commanding, yet calm. "She Crash," Kai explained, pointing to Illyra. "Not Union." The older man studied Illyra for a moment, then gestured for her to sit. "I am Rael, the leader of our people," he said, his tone steady. "You are far from home, Commander Illyra, but you are not the first to crash here. Many before you have come, only to leave when they realized the truth." Illyra's heart skipped a beat. "The truth." Rael nodded. "The Union lies. They abandoned us here long ago, calling us failures. But we have survived. We are more than just survivors, Illyra. We are free. The Union's lies cannot touch us here." Illyra felt a wave of confusion. The Union had promised that humanity was extinct on this planet. But here, right in front of her, was proof that the Union had kept more than just secrets. These humans were living, breathing, and thriving in ways the Union never told her about. "What do you mean?" Illyra asked, struggling to make sense of everything. Rael's eyes darkened. "The Union left us to die, but we didn't die. We lived, and now we fight. We fight to stay free." Illyra's mind raced. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but she had no idea just how deep the truth ran. The night had fallen over the village, casting shadows across the makeshift huts and the dense jungle that surrounded them. Illyra sat in the small, dimly lit room inside Rael's hut, trying to make sense of everything she'd heard. Kai and Rael had left her alone for a while, and she now had a moment to think. The air was thick with the sounds of the jungle outside, the calls of strange creatures echoing in the distance. But Illyra was lost in her thoughts. The Union had always painted humanity's past as one of exploration and unity. Yet these people, the wild humans, were living proof of something much darker. Rael had told her that the Union had abandoned them long ago, labeling them as failures and sending them to this planet to die. They had been cast aside, left to fend for themselves, with no help, no resources, and no hope. Yet, against all odds, they had survived and built a society. The more Illyra thought about it, the more it unsettled her. The Union's lies, the cover-ups, the way they had erased all trace of these humans from the records. Why? Her questions remained unanswered. But Illyra was determined to find out more. She had to know what had really happened. As the night grew darker, she stood up and quietly made her way outside. She needed to clear her mind, but there was something else that tugged at her, the buried ship. Rael had mentioned it briefly during their conversation, but Illyra hadn't had the chance to ask more. There was a hidden truth there, something important. She had to find it. Kai, who had been sitting near the edge of the village, spotted Illyra moving toward the trees. He quickly got up and followed her without a word, his movements swift and silent. Illyra didn't notice him until he was right behind her. She turned around, startled. "Where are you going?" Kai asked, his voice low but firm. "I need to see something," Illyra said, her eyes meeting his. "Rael mentioned a ship. I have to find it." Kai seemed to hesitate for a moment, then nodded, understanding the urgency in her voice. He didn't ask questions. He simply turned and led her toward the edge of the village, where the trees grew even thicker. The further they walked, the more Illyra felt a sense of unease. What had the Union done? What had they hidden here? The jungle seemed to grow denser, the air thick with moisture. The path was narrow, but Kai moved with confidence, his feet barely making a sound on the soft earth beneath them. Eventually, they reached a small clearing. The trees parted to reveal a structure, half buried beneath the earth. It was a ship, but not just any ship. A human ship. Elira's breath caught in her throat as she stared at it. The vessel was old, covered in vines and moss, its hull cracked and worn from years of neglect. It looked like it had been here for centuries. But Elira knew better. She recognized the markings on the side, the same as the ship that had brought the humans to this planet. This was no ancient ruin. This was the past, hidden away. Is this? Elira whispered, her heart pounding. Is this the ship they abandoned? Kai nodded. This is where it all started. The Union sent us here, but they never came back for us. Not when the ship broke. Not when we needed them. They left us to die. Elira's mind raced. This ship had been their last hope. And when it had failed, the Union had abandoned them. But the humans had survived. How? How had they turned this into something more than just a wreck? Kai seemed to sense her confusion and gave her a brief, sad smile. We fixed it. We learned. We made it work. Not as the Union intended, but in our own way. Elira moved closer to the ship, her fingers brushing against the cool, decaying metal. The markings were worn, but she could still make out the name. It was the same as her own ship, the Star Voyager. This was our mission, she murmured. To explore, to expand. And now, her voice trailed off. Kai watched her carefully. The Union lied. They abandoned us, Elira. They never wanted us to succeed. They didn't care about us, only about control. They couldn't let us live because we were different. We didn't obey. We were free. The weight of his words sank deep into Elira's heart. The Union had always claimed they were protecting humanity, guiding it to greatness. But the truth was far darker. The humans here hadn't failed. They had been punished. Punished for their resistance, for their refusal to follow the Union's oppressive rules. Elira looked up at Kai, a sense of determination growing inside her. But they didn't succeed. You didn't fail. You survived. Kai's eyes softened. We did more than survive. We fought back. And now we wait. We wait for the rest of the galaxy to see the truth. That the Union is not what they say it is. Elira felt a shift inside her. For the first time since she had crash-landed, she felt something that had been missing. Hope. The Union, she said, her voice steady, will not get away with this. I will make sure the galaxy knows the truth. Kai nodded. We've been waiting for someone like you, someone who sees the truth. But even as Elira spoke, a new thought lingered in her mind. The Union was powerful, its reach vast. How could she, just one person, take them down? Kai didn't answer, but his next words were a promise. We fight together. The sun was setting as Elira and Kai made their way back to the village, the weight of what they had just uncovered settling heavily on Elira's mind. The buried ship, the Union's betrayal, these weren't just lies. They were a systematic erasure of the past. The humans who had been abandoned on this planet weren't failures, as the Union had claimed. They were survivors, fighters, and they had been left to rot by the very people who should have protected them. But as they neared the village, something in the air shifted. A strange, low hum seemed to vibrate through the ground, and Elira's heart began to race. The feeling in the pit of her stomach told her that something wasn't right. Kai stopped in his tracks, his expression changing instantly. He turned to Elira, his face tight with concern. They're coming, he whispered. Elira looked up at him, confused. Who? Who's coming? Before he could answer, the sound of engines grew louder. Far above, in the brightening sky, a sleek, dark shape appeared. A Union scout ship. It was fast, its engines screaming through the air as it descended toward the village. Elira's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't supposed to be here. The Union had abandoned her, yet here they were, arriving not to rescue her, but to destroy everything she had just discovered. Kai's face hardened. They know. They're here to silence us. The ship was closing in fast. Its engines roared, and Elira felt the ground shake beneath her. Panic surged inside her. How had they found her so quickly? Was this a coincidence, or had the Union known about the humans all along? "We need to warn everyone," Elira said, her voice urgent. Now, Kay didn't hesitate. He turned sharply and ran toward the center of the village, Elira close behind him. The villagers were already moving, their faces filled with fear and confusion as the ship neared. There was no time to waste. Rael emerged from his hut, his expression grim as he saw the scout ship in the sky. He didn't need any more explanation. He raised his hand to the sky, signaling to the others. The village erupted into action, men, women, and children running to safety, grabbing weapons, and preparing for what was to come. Elira reached Rael, out of breath. "They're here to destroy us. We have to fight back." Rael nodded, his face unflinching. "We will not run. We have fought for too long to give up now." But even as he said those words, the Union ship was descending faster. Elira could see the markings on the side. It was a Union Enforcer class, built for combat and destruction. They had come to eliminate the humans and make sure no one ever knew the truth. "Take cover," Rael shouted to the villagers. "Defend the village. This is our fight." Elira felt a chill run through her. She had fought in battles before, but this was different. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for the truth. For all the humans the Union had cast aside, forgotten, and betrayed. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an attack on the village. The Union was trying to silence her too. They couldn't afford for her to tell the galaxy what she had learned. She was a threat now, and the Union never tolerated threats. As the scout ship hovered just above the treetops, a ramp lowered, and a group of Union soldiers began to descend. They were armed with high-tech weapons, their armor glinting in the fading light. Rael grabbed Elira's arm, pulling her toward a small building at the edge of the village. "Stay hidden. We'll hold them off as long as we can." But Elira refused to back down. She wasn't going to hide. Not now, not after everything she had learned. "I'm not running. I'm going to fight." Kai stepped forward, his face serious. "If you want to fight, then come with us. But stay close. These are no ordinary soldiers." Elira nodded, determination flooding her. She followed Kai and Rael toward the edge of the village, where the trees and thick underbrush could give them some cover. But even as they moved, the Union soldiers were already spreading out, searching for any sign of resistance. "We'll have to move fast," Rael said, his voice low. "They're coming this way." Elira didn't wait for more orders. She grabbed a makeshift spear from a nearby hut and followed the others into the jungle, staying low to the ground. They moved like shadows, their footsteps silent on the soft earth. The village behind them was quiet, but Elira could hear the distant sounds of gunfire and shouting. The Union was attacking. Kai turned to Elira as they moved through the trees. "You've seen the truth now. The Union won't stop until we're gone. But we won't go down without a fight." Elira's mind raced. The stakes were higher than ever. Not only were they fighting for their survival, but they were also fighting to expose the truth about the Union. The lies, the betrayal, it all had to come out. But how? How could they defeat a force as powerful as the Union? Then, Elira remembered the old ship, buried deep in the jungle. They had the technology. They had the knowledge to fight back. They weren't just survivors. They had the strength, the will, and the tools to stand up to the Union. "We're not just fighting for our lives," Elira said, her voice firm. "We're fighting for the galaxy to know the truth. The Union can't keep hiding what they've done." Rael looked at her, his eyes sharp. "That's the spirit. We'll need more than just weapons. We'll need everyone." And Elira knew that this was just the beginning. The Union had come to destroy them, but now they had something far more dangerous to fear. The truth. The jungle was dense, but Elira and the others moved swiftly, staying hidden among the trees and thick underbrush. The sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, the Union soldiers already making their way through the village. Elira's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. If the Union wiped out this village, if they silenced the truth, everything she had learned would be lost. They had to fight back. And they had to do it now. Rail led them deeper into the jungle, away from the village. The trees grew thicker, blocking out the sky and casting long shadows over the ground. The only sound now was their footsteps and the distant hum of the Union ship in the sky. The soldiers were closing in. "We need a plan," Rail said, his voice low but firm. "If we fight them head-on, we won't win. We need to hit them where it hurts." Illyra glanced at Kai, who was scanning the area, his sharp eyes alert to any movement. He didn't speak, but his actions said everything. He was ready for whatever came next. The villagers were resourceful. They had learned to survive in this harsh environment. And now, they were going to use that knowledge to fight back. "I know where they're vulnerable," Illyra said, her voice steady. "The ship. It's just sitting there, and it's their biggest weakness. If we can get inside, we can use their own technology against them. We can disable their weapons, their communications, everything." Rail nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "You're right. But the ship's defenses are strong. We'll need a distraction." Illyra felt the weight of the situation. They couldn't afford to fail. The Union was ruthless. But they had the advantage. They knew this land. They knew how to move silently. And they knew the terrain better than the Union ever could. "We'll create the distraction," Kai said, his voice calm but determined. "The villagers will set traps. They know the jungle better than anyone." Rail turned to Illyra. "You'll lead the charge. You know their ship's systems. If anyone can get inside and disable it, it's you." Illyra's eyes flickered with resolve. She had been trained to handle situations like this, but this wasn't just any mission. This was about stopping a lie, exposing the truth, and making sure the Union couldn't continue their cruel game. "We'll move fast," she said. "Kai, you and I will head for the ship. Rail, you stay here with the villagers and hold off the soldiers as long as you can." Rail gave her a tight smile. "You'll have what you need. We're with you." Without another word, they split up, each group moving in opposite directions. Illyra and Kai pushed through the dense jungle, staying low to avoid detection. The air was thick with humidity, but their focus never wavered. The Union was out there, hunting them, but they were no longer the prey. They were the hunters now. As they approached the clearing where the Union ship rested, Illyra's mind raced. The ship was heavily guarded, but the soldiers would be distracted by the villagers' traps. This was their only chance. The Union ship was huge, its dark, sleek surface reflecting the fading light. The ramp was down, and several soldiers were standing guard near the entrance. Illyra and Kai crouched behind a thick bush, watching them carefully. They had to move quickly before the soldiers realized what was happening. Illyra turned to Kai. "We'll create a diversion. I'll take out the guards near the ramp, and you take the ones on the left side. We'll meet at the ship's controls." Kai nodded, his expression serious. "Got it." Illyra gripped her spear tightly and took a deep breath. She had fought in battles before, but this time was different. This time, there was more at stake than just survival. The truth had to come out. With a quick nod, they moved out. Illyra sprinted forward, her heart pounding as she darted between the trees. She reached the first guard, a young soldier, and before he could react, she was on him. With a swift motion, she knocked him out, dragging him behind a tree to hide the body. Kai moved with equal precision, taking down the soldiers on the left side without making a sound. They worked like a well-oiled machine, each step planned and executed perfectly. They were getting closer. The ship's entrance loomed ahead, and Illyra's pulse quickened. They were so close now, just a little further. Suddenly, a shout broke the silence. "Intruders! Attack!" The soldiers had spotted them. Illyra's heart raced, but there was no turning back now. She sprinted toward the ship, her feet pounding the ground. Kai was right behind her, and they reached the ramp in seconds. But as Illyra began to climb, she felt a sharp pain in her leg. She stumbled, and before she could regain her balance, a blast of energy hit the ground near her. "Move, Illyra," Kai shouted, pulling her up. Illyra gritted her teeth and forced herself to keep going. She couldn't stop now. They had come too far. Once inside the ship, Illyra quickly moved to the control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. She could feel the heat of the blast still in her leg, but she pushed through the pain. The Union had underestimated them. They were going to take back control. The ship's systems buzzed to life, and Illyra's heart skipped a beat. She was in. Now it was time to finish this. Outside, the battle raged on as Rael and the villagers fought against the Union soldiers. The traps were working, but the Union wasn't backing down. It was a race against time. Illyra had to disable the ship before reinforcements arrived. But as she worked, a voice crackled through the ship's comm system. It was a Union officer, speaking directly to her. "Commander Illyra, you can't win. You're outnumbered. The truth you seek will never see the light of day." Illyra's fingers froze on the controls. The truth. She looked at Kai, who had just entered the control room, and gave him a small, determined smile. "The truth," she whispered, "will never be silenced again." With one final press of the button, the ship's weapons system powered down. The Union's grip on the planet was broken. The Union ship, now powerless, stood silent in the jungle clearing. The once threatening hum of its engines had faded, replaced by the quiet rustling of the trees and the distant sounds of battle. Illyra stood at the ship's control panel, breathing heavily, her fingers still lingering over the now dormant systems. Behind her, Kai stepped forward, his eyes scanning the area, alert for any signs of remaining Union soldiers. But the battle was already shifting. The villagers, guided by Rael, had turned the tide. The Union forces were disoriented, their plans unraveled by the very people they had tried to silence. Illyra turned to face Kai, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," she said softly, the weight of what they had accomplished settling over her. Kai nodded, his gaze firm but filled with pride. "We've taken control of the ship. We've stopped them from erasing our history. But the real fight has just begun." Illyra's eyes flashed with resolve. "The galaxy will know the truth now. The Union can't hide anymore." Together, they walked toward the ship's ramp, and as they emerged into the clearing, they were met with the sight of the villagers, some injured but many standing tall, victorious. Rael was among them, a solemn smile on his face. "It's over," Rael said, his voice steady. "For the first time, we're free. The Union can't touch us anymore." Illyra looked at the people around her, their faces filled with hope. These were not the broken, abandoned humans the Union had painted them as. These were survivors, fighters. And now, they were more than just outcasts. They were beacons of hope. The Union's lies had kept the galaxy in the dark for too long. But now, Illyra knew that nothing could stop them from telling the truth. The human spirit was stronger than any force that tried to control it. As the sky began to darken, the villagers gathered around, and Rael stepped forward, his voice booming with pride. "We will not just survive. We will thrive. This is our world now, and we will build a future for all humanity. The Union may have thought they could erase us, but we are still here, and we will never be silenced." Illyra felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had come here as a stranger, confused and uncertain. But now she had found a purpose, one that went far beyond survival. It was about freedom. It was about truth. She turned to Kai, her eyes meeting his. "We're not alone anymore, are we?" Kai smiled, the weight of the battle and their victory evident in his eyes. "No, not anymore." As the last light of the setting sun bathed the jungle in a soft glow, Illyra stood tall among the villagers, knowing that their fight was far from over. But for the first time, they had control of their destiny. The Union was no longer their enemy. Their real enemy was the silence, the lies, and the system that had sought to keep humanity in chains. But Illyra knew they would fight for the truth, for the future, and for all those who had been left to die. And in that moment, she understood. Humanity would rise, as it always had.